us George Thomas, who lives here in Perham, Minnesota, and he's agreed to speak with us about his years in the military service. So George, really want to thank you for letting us do this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much. I always like to get a little bit of an idea of what a person was doing before they entered the military. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview? Or?
Yes, I can. As a matter of fact, before World War II broke out, my brother-in-law and I decided to join the Minnesota State Guard. And we used to go down to the Armory downtown Minneapolis and train down there. And when the war broke out, they activated us. And went up to Camp Ripley and took some training there for guard duty. From there I went to Thompson Dam to guard the hydro stations there. They had 7 hydro stations that supplied the electricity for the Iron Range. We guarded those, and then they went to Duluth and guarded the 3 ore docks there, the aerial bridge that lets the boats in and out, PV elevators, and then I had to stand up in 2 harbors where the garden had only 1 ore dock there, but we guarded that. And then back to Duluth, just moving back and forth, you know. And my commanding officer said he thought I had the potential to be an officer. So he talked me into going down to Fort Snelling and taking a test for it, and I passed the test. So I went in in 42, then I went into the, I don't know how many people are aware of the fact that there is the Army of the United States and the United States Army. Officers are in one and the enlisted men are in the other. And I was in the Army of the United States. And when I failed to pass, to complete it because of my education, I only went to 8th grade. And so when it came to administration, I flunked. So what they have to do, they had to get me out of that branch and put me in the other branch. So I got, they wouldn't give me a furlough, everything was tied up on furloughs. So I said, well, give me the discharge, I'll maybe be home for a month or whatever. I was home 1 year and 2 months. And then they drafted me back in again. And I went right back to, well, I was at Fort Riley, Kansas at that when I was in the first part, and then I went back there again. And I was training men then. That's all they did. I trained men till I got sick of it because I'd get a good group and I'd want to go over with them. Nope, you're froze right here. You're a cadreman and you're going to stay here. I saw a sign that said, join the paratroops, all enlisted men and cadre. That's what I did. And I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and we were ready to ship out in 3 days. I had notification that we were going to ship over to Germany, and made my 6th jump, which was the all equipment. And rifle was hanging right underneath your chin. And my buddy says, pull that down when you go out the door because the opening shot could break your jaw. I pulled it too far. Caught the door and went out spinning this way. Got this foot caught in the suspension lines and when it took all the opening shock on this knee, tore it all up. So I never did get overseas. And I wound up, after I got out of the hospital, then all I did was give physical training to new recruits. So that was the end of me.
Now, you obviously were looking, I don't know if I should say, looking forward to going overseas, but you...
Well, I wanted to go because I'd get a good group that I had trained, and they were really on the ball, and I'd go in and ask the commanding officer to send me with them, Nope, you're froze right here. And that's what it was, until I saw that sign.
So he couldn't stop you from joining the paratroopers?
No way.
Okay.
He tried, but soon as well, you ask for permission to see the colonel, they can't turn you down. And I asked him twice. First time he said, I'll talk to him for you. Well, second time, I asked him and he said, no, I still haven't seen him, I'll talk to him. I said, sir, I want to see the colonel. Bingo, away I went. 5 minutes later, he was in there on the carpet. He said, anytime you got a man that wants to go to the paratroops, you let him know. And so I went.
So what was it like jumping out of airplanes?
I'm scared. There's no two ways about it. Especially, those were smaller chutes than what they got today, you know. You come down, it's like jumping off the second story, out of the second story window. That's about the speed you come down.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's a fair amount of impact.
Yeah. But you learn how to land.
Like to roll into it?
Well, you
Or
angle this way or you angle that way. You control that by the risers. And then you hit, first thing you hit is, of course, your feet with your knees bent. Take it off of here, take it off of here. Push-up muscle, and believe me, we had push-up muscles. And there you are, laying on your back. That's how you land. But you see them today when, like the Golden Knights, they land right down on their feet.
just like feathers.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, down in Yuma, we wintered down there in Golden Knights right there from January 15th to March 15th. We go out and watch them. It's a lot of fun. But I don't think I want to jump anymore.
Now, when you got tangled up, tell us a little bit more about exactly what happened. I mean, I understand you pulled it over too far, but
I was going flatways like this.
because your foot was caught in the lines of the
Well,
parachute?
first of all, I spun, and then when the chute came out, evidently this foot went through the suspension lines. And I took all the opening shock on this leg. And and it's only an 850-foot jump. And at that point, I'm thinking I'm gonna break my other leg because I go to tighten this up, and every time the muscles would tighten, that foot would go out like this. And I had the easiest landing I ever had.
So what you're telling me is the key to it is rip up one leg and you land easy, huh?
I
Wow.
don't know. But anyway, that's the whole story.
Now that would be, of course, happening very fast,
Oh, yeah.
but
Take long.
you certainly had enough time to be terror stricken, I would think.
Well, just enough to get, actually at 850 feet, you got 65 feet of suspension lines. When the backpack comes off, you got 65 feet of suspension lines, and then that little tied knot on there lets go, and the static line stays hanging out of the back of the plane. And the chute goes that way. And when the chute went that way, evidently I spun into it with my right leg. And I'd swear that foot hit me in the side of the head. I don't really know if it did, but it sure felt like it.
Wow.
And the funny part of that was not funny, but a friend of mine was a jump sergeant down there. And I knew he was, but I never saw him. And I was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And they moved us to the Alabama area, what they call the Alabama area, for our finals. And then we were going to ship from there to the final jump. And I'm sitting in the stand about 3 rows up with my chute and all the stuff on. And this guy came over and grabbed me by my reserve chute, lifted me up on my feet. I thought I'd done something wrong. Tommy, he says, I knew you were coming through here someday. He said, whatever you do, don't get hurt today. I'm shipping with you guys. And then he told me, pull that thing down. Well, I went too far.
So he said, whatever you do, don't get hurt.
Right.
And then his advice wound up.
Then he come to see me in the hospital about 12 o'clock that night.
Wow.
Wow. And of course they all went and I stayed there. But actually there was 400, I think 430 of us jumped and there was about 40 in the hospital afterwards. That's how bad it was. They called this field there the Three Sisters. There were three little fields and there were trees in and around them, you know, did field, you know, in an over three-plane formation. And they dump out, well, there's only 12 in the stick, and there's 24 guys and jumpers in the plane, but they go over and they jump the first stick, and then they turn around and come back and jump the second stick. So, well, guys landing in trees and it was a mess.
So about 10% wound up getting injured then.
That's about it.
Yeah. Now, when you refer to a stick, I assume that's what you clip onto when you...
No, a stick, that was 12 guys.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's what they called a stick.
Okay.
It was
All
12 guys. There was 24 guys in there, and this side of the plane where the door was, that stick went out first.
Okay.
And then they'd go and circle the field and come back, and then these other guys would get up and hook up on with their static lines.
Right. Okay.
But I wouldn't trade anything for the time I had in service. I enjoyed it very much.
How long were you in then?
Well, I got out in 45. I went in 42, was out for a year and 2 months and back in, and then out again at the end of the war. So,
Now, after you got out of the hospital, did you wind up doing the same type training you had been doing?
well, no, when I got out of the hospital, they assigned me to a unit that, let's say here's a whole school, maybe 1,200 guys in one class or whatever. And when they finished their jumps, then they got a furlough and they came back there and they had to hold them until they were shipped. So I was in that holding unit. And boy, these guys are tough. I got no news for you, because once they got that jump training completed, they were very cocky. And so somebody had to control, and that's what they had me doing. And I took them out and worked the heck out of them on calisthenics.
Just to kind of tire them down so they wouldn't be so ornery, huh?
Just to quiet them down.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
That was the sum total of it.
Now, what would you have been referred to when you were in that position?
Well, I was actually an acting sergeant. All the promotions were frozen, but they called me sergeant. I was a corporal, that was it.
Why had they frozen the...
Most of your promotions were done in the field at that time, because, you know, the guys that had worked out there in the field and earned it. And us guys that were still over here, it was hard to get promoted. You could be promoted to it. In fact, when I went back into the mechanized cavalry, when I went back a second time, that's all I did was train men, and they called me sergeant. And the day I left, the actual day I left to go to the paratroops, they come out and gave me my corporal rating. That they only got that far, as far as they got. But I still was called sergeant the whole time.
You were an acting sergeant even though you weren't technically even a corporal yet.
At that point, right,
Okay.
I was a buck private. But I had the same first sergeant when I went back as I had when I went in the first time. They asked me at classification, do you know anybody here? And I said, well, is First Sergeant Bennett still here? Yep. He sent me over to him. He says, yes, I need a platoon sergeant. You're it. And then he put in for the rating and never got it.
So, since you didn't technically get the ratings, you didn't get the pay raise
Oh,
either.
no. I got my $50 extra for jump pay, that was all. And they never did cut me off that. They were thinking about it because I wasn't jumping anymore. But I kept it all the way through.
Good. Well, it's only fair, especially since you should have been getting at a higher rate anyway, so.
Well, that's the way they go, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When you, let's say, well, how long were you in the Army of the United States?
Well, I went in there in 42. I came out in 43. And it's kind of a long story about that because there was no class. We were waiting for a class. So I was getting restless just sitting around. And so I talked to Sergeant Bennett and he says, "Can you drive truck?" I said, "Yeah." So he says, "Go down to the motor pool, they're looking for drivers." I started driving over the road with a semi. They were taking down all the old CC barracks and bringing them into Fort Riley, building, we called them wax shacks. That's was when they got all the wax in there. And I did that for, oh gosh, 2 or 3 months. And I was staying at the barracks there in the motor pool, and one day Bennett happened to see me. He says, "What are you doing here? You just missed a class." He said, "You get back over to the troop." Okay. Well, then I went back there and there was nothing going on. So he says, "You want to go to demolition school?" Yeah. So I went to demolition school. Then I went to radio school. And so I was wound up. I was a radio man at the time that I got discharged. And there's another little story if you want to hear it.
We want to hear every little story, so yep.
Forrest Tucker was in the same class I was in. He got washed out before I did. We were on a march, and he got himself to be the commanding officer. So he was taking us on a march, and there was snow all over the ground. And there was a major walking alongside of him, you know, kind of keeping him, an eye on him. And all of a sudden, there was a rifle laying in the snow. He halted us guys, brought us to a halt, and he walked over, picked up the rifle, and the whole area blew up. Not where we stood, but it could have been all of us. And we had just had a big deal on booby traps. He never took a note, that guy never took a note. And he'd criticize everybody else that had to get up. I had to give a 30-minute speech on a hand grenade, for Pete's sake. And here, afterwards, he says, they asked for criticism, so he gets up. "You looked like a cigar salesman up there. Your pencil going like this against your chest. And you were highly nervous and all that stuff, you know." And he picked on everybody. I was glad to see him go.
No kidding. Now, can you fill people in on who Forrest Tucker is for, you know?
Well, he was, his first movie was Keeper of the Flame. And he did a lot of Westerns.
Right, yeah. I'm just thinking for generations on down the line, that, yeah, so he wound up, you know, going on to be an actor and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
Well, he was an actor before he went in there.
I was just gonna say, yeah. Now, when that blew up like that, you weren't there in his group when that happened, right?
I was in marching with the rest
You
of them.
were marching?
Yeah, and
At the time,
Major just walked over to him and he says, "You just lost all your troops. Adios."
Wow. How did he handle it? Did you ever?
I never saw him after
Yeah,
that.
yeah, wow.
They get him out of there in a hurry.
Yeah.
I didn't stay there long.
Yeah. No, that's just the kind of interesting story we love to hear, is just the little aside type things, and, you know.
Well, that's the way it was.
How did you spend your time off duty most of the time? Was there enough to keep a person entertained on base?
Well,
where you were?
We played a lot of cards and stuff like that because at the time when I went in, I was getting $30 a month. And they took out for my wife, they took out so much a month for the sent to her. I had bought war bonds. And by the time I got done with all that, laundry, everything had to come out, I had $10.50 left. So you don't go far on that.
And that was for a week or for a month?
Month.
That was for the whole month? No, I'm sure, not even at the prices at the time, you don't go far on that, I'm sure. Wow. But see, you were smart. You were investing, you were putting some away and stuff too.
I had war bonds when I come out, so.
Mm-hmm. Now, when had you gotten married?
I got married in '39.
Okay, so you were already married before
yeah.
you even went into the State Guard then, or? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh, okay, all right. Well, now you came out with quite a bit of training
Oh, yeah.
in various areas.
Well, see, I took the training at Camp Ripley up here in Minnesota, and then I took, that didn't count for anything in the Army. So when I got in there, I took basic training, 13 weeks, and then into officer's training. And then when I went home and came back, what do? They shoved me right back into training again. So I had training. And
But I mean, I'm also thinking about like radio and demolition
Oh, yeah.
and driving I mean, you came out with a number of skills.
I took motor school too. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, I had all that time, and until they had a class for me. I could have went into, at that time, these tank destroyers. They had tank destroyers. Those guys were living on, they're gone. It's like that. I could have made second lieutenant in 6 weeks if I wanted to go down to Fannin, Texas to take that training. And I said, well, that's just all you are is bait. So I said, no, I won't take it. I could have been an officer quick if I'd want to take it.
But not for long, maybe.
All them tank destroyers, well, they were about like the PT boats that did the same kind of thing. They just go in and tin can practically.
Now, I'm kind of jumping ahead and we'll go back a little too, but I mean, now, did you wind up using any of the training that you got while you were in the Army in your civilian life later?
Oh, yeah, I did a lot of demolition. I used to,
We're not talking outhouses here now, right?
No.
Blowing up outhouses. No, I'm
No.
kidding you.
I used to I went to farming in '48, and I had some big rocks that I'd just take a crowbar and pound a hole down underneath a couple sides and slip a couple of sticks in there. Set them off and blow that baby out of there. Just come right up out of the ground, you know. Hook on there with a tractor and haul it away.
So that would be how you would get it lifted up out.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it wouldn't blow the rock to
No,
pieces.
you didn't want to do that. You'd
Right.
have-
You'd have to drill into the rock and,
Right.
yeah, sure.
Oh, you just got it down underneath and let it go, and she'd raise her up out of there. Enough so you get the chain on it. And tree stumps.
Uh-huh. Now be honest, was that kind of fun?
Oh, that was fun.
I thought so.
Yeah, I did a lot of dynamiting.
That sounds really fun. I guess every guy that grew up lighting off black cat firecrackers would love to do that. What other kinds of training did you wind up using?
Well, I never, of course, radio school. That was just for, we had those big armored cars and tanks there in the mechanized cavalry. And that we communicated by radio all the time. That was the only radio stuff. But other than that, a little on motors, I learned a little bit of mechanical stuff.
That'd come in handy on the farm, I'm
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Did you stay farming most of your adult life then?
Nope, as a matter of fact, I put in 4 years, I farmed 4 years of my life away, and then I started a machine shop down in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Went right back down to Cedar Rapids, huh? Or, oh no, that's right. You weren't living. Yeah, yeah.
No, my
yeah.
dad lived in Cedar Rapids, so
Right.
that's where I went to run
Right.
business with him. And, we built radio cabinets for about a year. We had a contract for 100,000 radio cabinets. And the guys were building cabinets for, they put the stuff in it themselves, the inner parts.
Okay. Now this was a machine shop.
Yeah, well, it was machine shop plus woodworking.
Okay. Okay. Tell like we were talking earlier about what your father did.
Yeah, well, my father was a electronic genius, honestly. He built the radio station in LaPorte City, Iowa. He never got the license for it. And they wouldn't, the FCC or whatever it is, they wouldn't give him a license to operate it, so he had to sell it. But he built the whole studio, like for a recording studio. As a matter of fact, in the old encyclopedia that I had, there was a deal in there on what he built, what he called a polycylindrical acoustic pad. It was built out of plywood, shaped round like this, only about that thick. And every one of those, they were 4 feet high and 2 feet wide. And the whole walls were lined with those. And there was one board in every one of them at a different level that killed all the sound echoes in that room. And the old encyclopedia, I can't think what the heck it was now.
Not the
I had it,
Britannica.
and that was in that darn thing.
Really?
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Well, and tell us about the school stoplight there, you know.
Yeah, when he started with that, he had, like I said, Excelsior, Minnesota won the first one. And it was right out on Highway 7 as you went through town.
Mhm.
And then he developed it to where it would run with a calendar in it. It was actually had a calendar. It was set for the whole year. When school was not operating, the thing didn't operate. And when like on Saturdays and Sundays, it shut down.
Okay.
And then on Monday it was open again, and all the way through the school season.
Right.
I don't know how in the world he did it, but
Well, and we didn't have the cameras running back when you told us originally that he was the one then that came up with the push button
Yep.
is what we're referring to, is the push button that kids can push and go ahead.
in 1950,
48, I think he did.
yeah,
Yeah.
in 1951, that was when he died. I was on the farm yet, and I went down to see him. And he asked me to take him to Chicago, because at that point he couldn't drive anymore. And my golly, we stopped in a town on the way there, and he had sold them this system. They had a highway running right on the edge of town. Kids had to come across that highway to get to school. And so he'd go like to the Moose Club or the Elks or one of those clubs and get them to buy the equipment. Well, then the highway department says, okay, we have to have a traffic check on that to see if it warrants this. So he would have a meeting with the
Sure.
wags.
He was smart.
Go through that intersection as many times as you can. You get it passed.
Oh, smart.
Man,
Well, I probably better steer you back to the Army, but I thought that was kind of interesting that he was the first one to ever develop
Oh, yeah.
that for school crosswalks.
exactly.
You know? yeah.
And
Now,
Crown Signal in Cedar Rapids, Iowa bought it from them, so
mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're doing these days with it, but I'm sure it's still going.
Oh, I imagine they've just, made it now to where it'll come home with you and do your windows,
Just
you know?
about, yeah.
Now, you said you wouldn't trade anything for your time in the Army.
No, I loved it. I did.
I have a question for you that's a hypothetical question. If you could go back in time and press a button and have your chute open correctly and not tear up your knee and get to go over and do the paratrooping, would you do it?
Of course.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this is honest God truth. I talked to the Golden Knights down in Yuma, and they would take me up.
They would take you up even now and let you jump.
But they do it with the guy with you.
Sure.
Well, George Bush did his there.
Yes. Okay.
Same place.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yep.
Are you ever tempted?
Kinda.
I thought so. I could hear it in there.
Kinda.
Uh-huh.
It was quite a thrill, but anybody that says that they weren't scared on their first jump is crazy.
Yeah.
You had no idea what you were gonna expect, you know. And once you got the first one in, then it was still a little fear. You see the guys once in a while, they've had those suspension lines come over the top, and that's what they call a Mae West. It was like a big brazier up there. And the air comes out of it fast, and you really come down in a hurry.
Now, would you use your reserve chute
Use
there?
your reserve, but
That's not gonna do it.
that thing, well, it saved lives, but by the same token, people got busted up pretty good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would save your life, but it's not gonna make you land like you would have. Yeah. Yeah.
And then streamers, all in one big line, never open. Them are the ones that kill,
Yeah.
because, we jumped at 1,200 feet normally, and then combat jump was 850. And it don't take long to find the ground. Swing about this many times underneath there and you're on the ground.
Really? I've thought of, if I ever get the money to do it, I think I will do it. But I don't know. I'd have to jump with somebody,
Well, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. If a young man were going into the service, what advice would you have given when you got out of the service to a young man going into the service at that time?
Well, the big thing is try to enjoy it, and it's not easy when you're called in for the duration of the war plus 6 months. You don't really figure on coming back. That's about the way it is. And so try to do the best you can, that's all. And there's so many of them that didn't really participate the way they should have in the thing. They didn't like it, didn't want to be there, and you have to have some purpose in it, that's all.
Did you ever, you mentioned how you would train a group and get a really good group together and then they'd go over. Did you ever get word back of who would or wouldn't be, who wouldn't have,
Well, as a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, he was from Anoka, Minnesota. Him and I were right together all the time. As a matter of fact, we're both T's. And they set you up in your stick by the alphabet. So he was always right in front of me. And he'd say, Tommy, if I stopped at that door, he says, you kick me, I don't want to go. Because a lot of them wouldn't get to the door and freeze, And he was a really funny guy. Well, he wound up, that's the only one I ever heard from out of the whole doggone bunch. He wound up driving Chief for Eisenhower after the war was over in Germany.
Wow.
He said he had a lot of fun, a lot of privileges.
no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
Did word come back to the base about casualties that you had trained, or not so much? Because
No, because you just, I got away from the cavalry, and that's where I trained the guys. And, so I had one guy, a friend of mine, that I used to write to all the time, and I got a letter back, marked deceased, so that's all I ever knew about him. I don't know what happened to him.
right.
And that was while he was still in the States, so I don't know what happened.
Wendy, what questions came to your mind as we were talking? This has been pretty darn interesting.
Yeah. Well, with the, I know it's probably a dumb question, but do the airplanes slow down when they jump out?
Okay, she wants to know, I'm pretty sure they don't, but they might level off or
Like
do
how
something special. Does the
fast are
airplane
they going?
do anything special when you're
Right.
ready to jump, or does it
They
slow
always-
down?
They
Or?
always cut back the engines.
They do then.
Okay.
And it would go, okay, the first guy out normally was the last guy to hit the ground, because the plane is going
Oh,
down like
sure.
this. Otherwise, the door, the tail is up, the
Oh.
tail is up,
Yikes.
you know,
Yeah,
you go underneath. If they were climbing, the door is higher than the tail. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so you want to be descending and
Yeah.
decelerating to do so.
C-47 was the one that was the best one. They had a 46, C-46, and that tail was too low, and they had a lot of, when they first started, they had some guys slam into that tail, so. They always cut the engines down and they just were going down. And it was hard to believe that the last guy out of the plane was the first one on the ground.
That, I mean, it makes sense, but you'd never think so.
Uh,
Yeah. Wow. Now, was it harder to be the last guy because you wouldn't have as much grace period if something went wrong? Because you'd be at a lower
I
altitude.
there wasn't much of that really.
Okay.
I seen a couple of May West when I was on the ground. The guys landed all right.
Mm-hmm.
And may have a broken leg or something like that.
There were paratroopers in World War I, weren't there, or not? Or was this a new?
I don't know. I couldn't
Okay.
tell you that.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is when you said you had, some of them hit the tail and they changed it. It's like, was this a new art? To be were the parachutes a new concept that they were just perfecting how to do this? Do you think?
No, it was in the design of that 46. They cut that out completely on the jumps because of the tail thing.
Okay.
And of course, when they went to the 4-engine job, they had to cut the inboard engines because they threw them guys together at the back of the plane, just go rump, rump, rump,
Oh, it would. Yeah.
the air coming together.
Yes. Yeah.
And they had guys coming down in knots. I've seen them come down 5 in 1 knot. They all landed. They're tangled up, going through each other's suspension lines from the thrust of those inboard engines, and so they cut that out. They cut them down and left the outside.
Sure. So they were definitely in a learning curve.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of that when
Yeah.
the war broke out.
Yeah.
There was some bad things happened. It was all a learning process.
Yeah. What are you breathing a sigh of relief I didn't ask you? I said, what are you breathing a sigh of relief that I didn't ask you?
I don't think anything.
No.
I think I'm,
What's that?
Yeah, basic training and officers training, like, kind of talk about those trainings that were similar, different.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Wendy was just kind of wondering, first, of course, had basic training, and then later on you would have some officers training and such.
Yeah.
Describe the difference between that. I mean, one's more, well,
it's a lot more technical in the officer's training. You have to be an officer and a gentleman, number one, and Actually, the training wasn't that much different, excepting that when I got into the administration thing, I didn't finish 8th grade. I left home when I was 13 years old. I was raised up in Saskatchewan. And my stepdad and I didn't get along, and I hauled out, so my education was very slim.
Well, it hasn't hurt you any, because you're certainly an intelligent man, that's obvious.
Well, I've ran 4 businesses
Yeah.
since I got out.
Back to the if you could push a button thing. If you could push a button and have passed the administration thing, or you could push a button and have gotten to go ahead and be the paratrooper thing, which one would you want?
Well, at the end, I would have liked to have been a jump sergeant. That's a master sergeant, and the master sergeant was better off than a major when it comes to, major has to have his own housing. The enlisted man does not. He has to, I think they even have to pay their own food and stuff like that. And there's a lot of time they get done with all the stuff they have to pay for. I think I'd come out ahead as a master sergeant, which I was offered if I'd have stayed in. And I had 3 kids at home, and figured it was time to go and take care of family.
Mm-hmm.
And
But that would have appealed to you then?
oh yeah, I liked the paratroops, I did.
Now, do you have any kind of a paratrooper patch that you wear on anything anymore?
No, I've got them though.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't wear it.
You ought to have something you wear that on.
Well, I still got my wings.
Yeah. Well, you ought to have Kathy sew a patch on or wear your wings, one or the other, because it's certainly something
I
to be
don't
proud
have
of.
any of my uniforms anymore.
Oh, okay.
Nothing.
Yeah, kind of 2 questions, maybe in one, but what were the biggest challenges training the men?
I did have one big challenge. There were 2, oh shoot. What's the island's 90 miles off of Florida Keys? Cuba.
Mhm.
I had 2 Cubans,
Okay.
and they would not speak English. And they could speak English, but they'd always talk to me in their Spanish, and I'd get so mad at them. And
Wouldn't that be grounds for disciplinary action?
it was, and I give them disciplinary action, but another thing was when we were doing calisthenics and stuff like that, they'd never be in rhythm, and I'd on them and on them and on them, and I had them doing extra duty most of the time. But the funny part of it was when I left there and went to the paratroops, those guys gave me a present. Those 2 guys. After all the junk we went through together, and they really settled down. They were pretty good soldiers. It was amazing to me.
I need a high five for that one. That's cool. That is so neat.
Yeah, we had this one deal. We had to jump a ditch, and them guys would not jump it. They'd get up to it, run like heck, and get up there and fall into it. So I'd grab them, one in each hand, and then we'd go racing up to that thing, and I'd make them go in the heck. They'd drag me right down into that hole. And stuff like that.
Now, was that obstinance or fear?
I don't know what it was, but I finally got them over it,
Mm-hmm.
and climbing the wall and stuff like that. They had trouble with that too. And then they'd be yakking at me in Spanish. I'd lose my temper with them.
Understandable, yeah. But then they're the 2 that give you a present.
They're the only 2 that gave me a
Wow.
present. They gave me a nice pen and pencil set. What the heck?
Fisher thing?
Yeah, it was a real fancy
Uh-huh.
deal.
Oh.
Gave it to me for going away.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Now, you mentioned it was quite a challenge to keep, oh, we're doing time, please. Okay. It was quite a challenge to keep the guys, once they gotten, I don't know if you say got their wings, but, you know, done their last jump, their sixth jump, you know, and they're waiting to be, whatever. What were the challenges there? You said they were so cocky and.
Well, a lot of them, they wouldn't, so every Saturday morning we had inspection. And commanding officer, myself, and whoever would go through the barracks. Well, I'd go through that barracks that I was in charge of, and if things weren't right, I'd get a hold of it. I'd put one sergeant or somebody, that, you had all kind of rank in there that were going through the paratroops. And I'd generally pick a sergeant, I had him put him in charge of the lower, and one in charge of the upper part of the barracks. And I walked in there and went through the things, getting ready for inspection, and my God, the beds, some of them on the second floor were terrible. So I called this guy up there, and of course he was cocky guy, and, you know, I'm a sergeant here, you don't even have a stripe on you. Oh, well, he mouthed off to me, and I knocked him down the stairs. And what you could get by with the paratroops. If you get beat up by a non-com, you kept your mouth shut. If he got beat up by you, he kept his mouth shut. There wasn't any of those such thing as tattling to the commanding officer. But he got that thing in shape. Well, I got them guys up there and they straightened it out in a hurry. But they were cocky, you know.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Heck, and that's another thing, they actually taught us that you could whip any three guys once you got your wings. You were tough stuff. Push-ups, man alive. That was the big thing, push-ups. I used to be able to do 150, roll over my back for 5 minutes and turn over and do another 150. And then roll over my back for 5 minutes and do another 150. That's a fact.
Let the camera note the dead silence is because we're both stunned.
No, that's a fact. You get
Wow.
I've seen guys that could do 50 on one arm.
And that's because those muscles were important in landing.
Oh, these muscles here.
What's that?
was-
Lats, well, yeah.
That's where you bounced.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah, that's quite a deal.
wow. What do you feel let's even say today, in your life today, is there anything that you feel that you learned or took away from being in the military that serves you well even to this day?
Oh, yeah, discipline. Very much so. Yeah,
Ability to self-discipline yourself?
exactly.
Mhm.
I have 3 sons that were all in the service, and I had one that didn't do. He just did what he had to do, and that was it. And you don't go anyplace.
Well, anything I've forgotten to ask you about, or any other
No, I don't
interesting
think so.
stories that we didn't think to ask you
I
about?
think that's about it. Well, except I guess I could brag a little bit about what I've done in the city of Perham.
I would hope so. Go for it.
In '77, I come up here and started a machine shop, welding shop, rebuilding the big screws that they use in the extruders for Tuffy's pet food. That's what I came up here for. And I wound up, I sold it, let's see, 7 years later. I sold it 7 years later, '84, for $1 million.
That's a lot of money nowadays, but in 1984, that was one bleep of a lot of money.
Anyway, I retired for 8 years and I went back into business again. And that's still going, both them businesses are still going, by the way.
Really?
C.A. Picard bought the first one. And the second one is out here on the highway where that motorcycle shop is there. The building sits in front of it,
Okay.
PR&D. We work with feed mills and people that pelletize all the sugar beets in the state of Minnesota there. And then just wound up, we're building it's a special roll. It's got tungsten carbide on the outside so that it makes the roll last and last and last. It's a special application. I built the machines myself, invented them. I got 2 machines, and we're now building tungsten rolls for all of our competitors. Our shells are being shipped worldwide,
Wow.
and I sold it to my employees.
That's pretty neat.
So
Wow.
finally, I'm retired again.
Again, for a little while, huh?
Yes, what are you gonna do next? No, I'm done.
Yeah. So I take it in '84 you went through the first mill and had to go back to work? I'm kidding. No, you seem like the guy
As a
that,
matter of fact, most of that money is gone. My wife had Alzheimer's.
oh, sorry
And I
to hear
spent 5.5 years. Didn't have any extra insurance for it. Everything came out of my pocket,
that. Wow.
out of the bank.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
So,
That's a challenge on all levels, let alone to have the financial on top of it, yeah. Well, you just seem like the kind of guy that would be happy going back to work and being active and doing something anyway.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
So, yeah. George, thank you so much.
thank you.
And thank you for your service to your country.
Ah, you betcha.